Happy Halloween, everyone. In today's video, I'm going to show you the design that is on my nails for Halloween, and it is a mix of all of my favorite Halloween topics. I've got spiders and spider webs, a zombie hand, and a pumpkin, and a skull. Obviously, I like skulls. I hope you guys like this design as much as I do. All the products are from Madam Glam, and I'll put all of their color names in the description box below, so check that out, and I will see you all next time. Bye! We are going to begin for the thumbnail, and I'm going to paint a darker shade of like a fuchsia. I don't know if you want to call it purple or pink, but it's like a purpley pinky color, and I'm going to paint that on the sides, and then a brighter shade or a lighter shade of that color in the middle. With a Madam Glam ombre brush, I'm going to ombre those colors together so we have a radial ombre that's dark, light, dark. After that's been done, do 2 coats. I'm going to take black gel paint, and all of these colors are from Madam Glam. I've got 2 greens, 2 oranges, and 2 purpley pinks, and then black gel paint, and I will put links to all of those colors or all the color names in the description box below, as well as my discount code. So we've got our spider. For the thumb, I'm going to begin with the 2 pieces of the body, the head and the abdomen, and I'm going to just outline them. I'm just going to start with outlining them, and then I'm going to start painting in the legs. So I wanted my spider to be very leggy, very tarantula in shape. Usually when I paint a spider or a tarantula, well, not a tarantula, but usually when I paint a spider, I do just very bold black lines. For the spider legs, I want them to be, really visible, really creepy, give you that quick look, ooh, that is a spider, just very vivid. That's not what I'm going for with this particular one. In fact, this whole design, I want it to be a little bit softer looking, a little bit like a sketch, almost like a comic book or a comic strip. So I'm going to do all of these little black outlines, trying to keep them incredibly thin as I'm going through. When you are painting with black gel paint, or any gel paint for that matter, and you want to do thin lines, it can be really tempting to not put a lot of paint on the brush, which is what I do for acrylic paint, but you have to treat gel paint differently. And what I always suggest is that you get your brush, put some paint on, say, the bottom third of the bristles of the brush. This does depend a little bit on the size of brush they're using, but approximately the bottom third. And then either on the side of the paint pot or on a palette or something, brush your brush through the paint that's on itself. So just kind of like brush the bristles. Don't ever push it forward. Always pull back through the paint and get it so that you have the paint almost all the way up to the top of the bristles. Don't go like up and over the top of the brush, but just, right up to the top there. And then make sure that your bristles are separated from each other. You don't want them to be glued together at all, which is something that happens a lot with gel brushes. They get kind of sticky and stuck together. So you have to make sure that you loosen that up. So if you have to, you can kind of twist your brush through the gel paint. That'll maybe help loosen it up. If you don't do that, you're going to end up with this little ball of paint on the end of your brush, and then it's going to scooch up so that there is a space. There's going to be the tip of the bristles and then this ball of paint. And when that happens, when you go to paint a thin line, you'll get nothing, and then you'll get a blob. And you won't get thin, delicate lines. It'll be kind of a mess. So whenever you're painting with gel paint, make sure you load your brush and then take extra out. And that's how you're going to end up accomplishing those skinny little lines. Now moving on to my pointer finger, my index finger, I'm going to start out with a really bright green, and I'm going to be adding just a silhouette of a zombie hand that is sitting there kind of creepy like. Then with a brighter shade of green, I'm going to add some highlights to my zombie, just giving a little bit of splotchy highlights. Still going back through with the gel paint, adding all of these outlines. Especially for something like the zombie hand, take your time, slowly find them. You're painting a hand, which is notoriously difficult to paint. And just try not to rush it. You've got all of these shapes that are sort of built in here. You kind of just have to find them slowly one by one, but don't think that it's obvious just because you have the base there. Unlike the spider where there was no guides whatsoever, this one has guides. And so it might just seem like it would be not that big a deal to just quickly fill in the outlines. But still, take your time, figure them out slowly. Add crosshatch little lines with your black everywhere where there needs to be a little bit of shading. I personally love that style where you do shading with black lines. I feel like it's especially fitting for Halloween. And when you're doing something like a zombie hand, make sure that you really darken, the areas that would be behind. So right underneath the palm of the hand, right where the thumb attaches to the wrist, there's definitely going to be a little shadow. So make sure you add that area and get it a little bit more blackened. On the middle finger, I'm going to go back to my purpley pinks, and I'm going to be adding the darker color in a straight line about a third of the way down the nail, the lighter color in the bottom third, and then blend them together once again with that gel brush so that it's a nice ombre from dark to light. After you have done a second coat of that, I'm going to take black gel paint, surprise, surprise, and I'm going to do just a nice outline right across the top between where there is no gel polish to that ombre. And then within the tip color, I'm going to paint a spider web. Same system. I'm trying to make these lines really, really nice and thin, very delicate. Another thing that's very helpful to remember when you're painting any line art whatsoever with whatever kind of brush you're using, whatever kind of product you're using, acrylic paint, gel paint, whatever it is. When you are doing that, you want to always bring the brush, pull it towards your hand. So you never want to be pushing your bristles. And that might seem obvious. That might seem like, well, yeah, of course, you just, that's the shape. But when you're doing these curves, you'll notice that sometimes I'll be going from right to left, and sometimes I'll be painting from left to right because it's the direction that feels more natural to be pulling the bristles towards my hand. As you're doing that, you might find that, certain angles are more comfortable than others. Figure out what's comfortable for you. Sometimes when I'm painting my clients' nails, what's comfortable for me is to actually, I'll have one hand holding their finger and one hand on top of their hand, pulling back towards my hand. Not always just with my other hand on the table. Sometimes, I'll have all sorts of different contortions for them too. As long as they're capable of it, then there is no issue with that. In fact, they're usually like, oh, this is so cool. I'm an art project here. And so if you can, that is another option for you. And you can do it. It's a lot easier to practice on yourself, moving your fingers into what position feels comfortable. On the ring finger, I started out with a very bright orange. Taking a lighter orange, I'm going to be adding the highlights to my pumpkin. I'm going to make a little jack-o'-lantern here with the green that I used. On my zombie hand, I'm going to be adding the stem of my pumpkin, kind of filling that in, highlighting that just as I did the zombie hand with a little bit of a brighter shade of green. And then after that's done, you're going to be shocked by this, but we're going to be using black gel paint to add all the details to the jack-o'-lantern. I know, it was like the surprise of the century. With your black gel paint, same thing, careful little lines going through. Add a little bit of a shadow right around the stem of the pumpkin. Give that a little bit of a darkness to it. This design for me is all about balancing the really bright, almost pastel colors with these intense black lines and black areas. It looks almost like they have been faded, like this design was set out in the sun and it's been faded a little bit, and it looks a little bit vintage to me, which I love it. It's just, I do. I really like this one. It's probably one of my favorite Halloween designs I have ever worn on myself. So we've got the little pumpkin eyes, we got the pumpkin nose. I am making my pumpkin a little bit uneven. He's got different kind of shaped eyes. His nose is crooked. Everything is just a little bit topsy-turvy with him, which I think just kind of adds to the whole mystique of this. And then we're going to fill in those eyes with the black. If you wanted to, the eyes wouldn't have to be completely filled in just with black. A lot of times when you see jack-o'-lanterns that are a little bit more artfully done, as far as like a painted depiction, they don't actually fill in the eyes and the nose with black because the inside isn't automatically just black inside. You can see the other side of the pumpkin, so it's a darker brown. There's different shades within it. So if you wanted to, you could do those little crosshatch lines throughout the eyes and the nose and the mouth to give it a not quite black look. But all that being said, I did want them to be a bold black, so here we are. Finish adding all of your little details to the pumpkin, any shading that you feel like it needs to be, separating out the different bumps in the pumpkin. After that's done, on the pinky, this is going to be the only other full covered nail, so the thumb and pinky are completely painted. I'm going to use the lighter green on the side away from my other fingers and then the brighter green on the side towards my other fingers. I always say it that way because it's not just left and right, depending on what hand you're painting, depends on if it's the left or the right. So I always consider if it's what color is towards the ring finger or the finger next to it. After I've got that done, I'm going to use just the brighter shade of green, and it's really hard to see it in the video as far as where I'm putting this, but I'm going to sketch in the shapes of the skull. So I'm going to be doing a half a skull. So I'm trying to just keep it from like splitting the nasal cavity in half and doing everything to the one side. So we have one eye socket, one half of the jaw, one cheekbone. You get the drift. I'm going to fill in the eye socket with that series of kind of soft black lines, as I was describing that you could do if you wanted to for your jack-o'-lantern, that same kind of a style. That's what I'm going to be doing for my skull. I'm going to add what I can of the nasal cavity, looking from the side of my finger. Very awkward, by the way, on camera to look at the side of my pinky to see what I was doing. So I was painting kind of blind right there. It worked out. It's all good. It's just one of those, when you don't know some of these things, when you're watching the videos, how weirdly contorted I sometimes get when I'm painting my own nails for a video. And I cramp up sometimes. It's awesome. Totally worth it. But just, if anybody was curious about the trials that sometimes I put myself through, I'm going to be adding in the teeth of my little skull here. I'm trying to keep all of these lines, as I have been throughout this whole video, very thin, very delicate. The skull does allow for a little bit more boldness, especially around some of these shapes that are more defined and more precise. Like for me, the teeth, you really got to make sure that the teeth are visible and they're in their place and they're just how they're supposed to be. After you are done with that, I'm going to go through with my other shade of green, the darker green. I'm going to add some shading. This is the only nail that I went back to the darker color, but I'm going to add just a little bit of darkness here and there where it needs it. And then I'm going to be applying a coat of matte top coat over all of the nails. On the middle finger, however, I'm going to add a little crystal and some studs. So before I put the matte top coat on, I'm going to apply some jewelry gel right along that black line at the top, and then apply the matte top coat over the jewelry gel before it's been cured. And then press in those embellishments. I'm going to use a green crystal in the middle and then these orange petal shaped studs on the sides. I was so happy when I was looking through my collection of, embellishments, and I found those. Like, these are the perfect little combination. I added a black caviar bead on the four corners around the crystal, and that's it. I love these. I know I've said that a bunch of times throughout this video. I just cannot get over it. This is like my favorite design I've ever done. They almost look like they're glowing in the light, even though they're not. I hope you guys like it as much as I do, and I will see you all next time. Bye!